Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
It's time now for Matthew Dickerson, presenter of the Tech Talk podcast, bringing you the latest tech news. Hello.
Yeah, good morning, Lisa. Great to be talking to you.
Now, this is an interesting story that you've come across regarding sound waves used to shatter liver tumours. Tell us about this. Is this actually something that's happening, or is it on the horizon?
Well, a lot of the things I talk about are things that are coming in the next few years, but you get a bit excited when you read about some of these stories and do some research on them when they finally get to the stage where someone in officialdom gives it some approval. So this particular one has now been approved by the FDA in America. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to definitely work, but at least it's got to the point where the FDA has said, well, we think it's safe. Whether it's going to do what the manufacturers promise it will do is another thing, but it seems to be going down the right path. And this is something where they're basically using sound waves to shatter liver tumours. They've got a name for it, and of course, because it's a medical device, Lisa, they've come up with a name that's hard to pronounce. It's called histotripsy. And I hope I pronounced that right, but it's histo with tripsy on the end of it. So it's a device that basically gives you something that isn't invasive. It sits on the outside. They tune it in to where the tumour might be, use high energy ultrasound waves. And what that does is create some micro bubbles within the tumour. And then they basically stress the cells and tissues and disintegrates the tumour. As with many things that happens in the medical field, they've done testing on mice, and in mice, it works fantastically. Now, whether that applies to humans or whether that's going to apply to every case, we're not 100% sure yet, but at this stage, it seems like it's a pretty good process to go down to attack tumours. Now, there's so many different ways that obviously tumours are attacked, and there's research happening all over the world, but this seems like a fairly good non-invasive way to start attacking tumours. Now, why it's in the liver and why it's only working in the liver, not for other cells, other cancerous cells, I'm not sure. I couldn't find that on the research, but at this stage, looking at tumours in the liver only.
Very interesting and promising if it does actually work. That's the big thing. Also, another interesting development, haptic technology is transforming the musical experience for the deaf and hard of hearing. Can you elaborate?
Sure thing. And haptic is one of those things that people don't necessarily know immediately what haptic is. And if they think about their phone, sometimes when you'll press a button on your phone, you feel like you've pressed the button, but there's no actual button there to press. And that's an example of haptic technology. So one of the things that manufacturers of phones found several years ago when they were trying to make their phones waterproof or water resistant, be able to put it in, say, 1.5 metres of water and not have any water get into it, the biggest issue was some of the buttons that you'd press, the seal around the edge of that button was allowing water to get in still. So that's where they came up with this concept of haptic technology. So essentially it's a small vibration that makes it feel like you've pressed the button, and it's very real. But where some people have started to use this now is for people that are hard of hearing or people that are deaf and they want to go and enjoy live music, enjoy a musical concert, then obviously it's not as much fun for them as their friends that are sitting there and able to listen to the music. Now, you might think that you can feel music, and especially when you go to those concerts, and I'm sure you do it, Lisa, you stand right up the front at the concert, you're right in front of those huge bass speakers, and you can feel that music going through every part of you, because I can see you being in the mosh pit right at the very front enjoying that concert.
I always am at the front because I'm 4'11". If I want to see anything, I am actually in front of the speaker because I arrive late, so I get the position in front of the speaker, but I'm at the front.
Right. Isn't that where you get on someone else's shoulders and then you get right up the front by doing that? That's another technique as well.
No one's that kind.
So what they've actually been looking at now is haptic vests. And so you put on a vest, and so it's like a normal sort of vest, but it's got various haptic components on it there. So as the music changes frequencies, the vest reacts to that, and so you don't just feel the bass of those speakers, you're actually feeling different parts vibrating around that vest. So as the frequencies change, the vest changes its vibration. So you're not going to be able to hear the music per se, but you're going to be able to feel that music in a slightly different way. And one of the things I love about technology and about research is that you and I, we can obviously hear, so we probably aren't thinking about doing research around people that have got lack of hearing or hard of hearing, but there are people out there that experience this or have people in their lives that have got hard of, or hearing loss. So they're trying to create things for people that might apply. And then you've got this worldwide audience that might apply to this. So that's the first part. But as they've been going through looking at this to enjoy music, they've actually been able to find that some ways they might be able to develop this technology further to actually help people hear. So you can actually transform those vibrations to the point where maybe some basic words, maybe some basic speech patterns could actually vibrate in a different way. And some people that can lip read as well as have hard of hearing or are hard of hearing, they might be able to actually enjoy some type of conversation with people by a combination of vibrations on their vest, learning what those different vibrations are, and lip reading as well. So first of all, it's starting out for music, but it might actually be a next step they might be able to go down.
Yeah, and replacing or not really replacing, assigning a vibration to a word reminds me a lot of what's happening in I forgot the you would know, I'm guessing the official name, for example, for images of space. And how there's these very, kind of complex sort of images and colors, and musicians and scientists are working together where they apply different musical sounds to the different waves, and not only is it creating a beautiful sonic experience, but it's also for people who are visually impaired who might then be able to experience the images, and as scientists, through learning what each different wave, what sound that is, doing their work and exploring and examining those images using the sound. Now, this is different because this is for people with hearing issues, hearing impairments, but it's feeling the sounds. I think that's such a wonderful way of, you know, thinking outside the square and including everyone who either wants to experience or can be a part of analysing and working with these music pieces, with these images.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And that's the thing. It's actually transforming it, whether it be, as you're saying there, transforming images into sound or transforming sound into vibrations. It's a way of trying to use some of the other senses that people might not have access to and use the senses they do have access to.
Now, are you a traveller by any chance, Matthew?
I do like to travel just a bit. I've just returned from India, actually, so it's something that it's nice to get around the planet and see different areas and see the technology in different areas, actually.
Well, what's been happening with facial recognition in travel and tourism?
Well, this is actually a really interesting one. I love the concept of it, but I understand there are some people out there that are just a tad nervous about the concept. And of course, when you go through customs, you've got all the hassle of having your passport and filling in various bits and pieces of paperwork. And I always feel a bit annoyed when you turn up to any country and it's, here's the lineup for locals, here's the lineup for visitors, and the visitors line is always a lot longer. We've got some places now in a whole range of different areas where you'll just be able to walk on through, smile at the cameras and keep walking because they're using facial recognition for some of these. Now, again, you can just hear some people out there going, oh my gosh, I don't want to have people tracking my face and knowing where I am every point of time to know what's happening. But there's some pretty logical places where you might want to do that. Airports are one, and it's being used already in some examples in domestic travel. Singapore's looking at it for international travel, but Miami International Airport, for example, they've got 12 gates that have got faces or facial recognition cameras, and they'll just match those with photos, and you just stroll on through. One that I really liked the idea of was cruise ships. And I remember being on a cruise ship years ago and you had to kind of check out as you went on shore and you had to check back in. And then at the end of the day, they're going, hold on, we're still waiting for Billy Bloggs and Mary. They're not back yet. Let's see if they are. But of course, they'd come back in, but they'd forgot to scan themselves back in. But cruise ships are looking at this concept where they'll just use facial recognition so they'll know when people walk off and then when people walk on. So they'll capture everyone, whether or not they lost their pass or they forgot to scan back in. The theme parks are doing it as well. You register at the theme park, you scan your face in, and then for the rest of the day in that theme park, as long as you walk up, look at the camera, yes, you're allowed to go on this ride, on you go. Oh, you've checked into the fast pass, so you can go down this line, Lisa, not that line, because we know that your face is checked in with this particular pass. So it sounds great. sounds fantastic. But of course, then people say, hold on, how long are you going to keep my face in your database for? How long do you know that Matthew Dickerson and that face are matched up? Of course, theme parks, cruise ships say, once you're done for the day or once you've done for that cruise, we'll wipe all that data. But we've seen some examples in the past, Lisa, where maybe companies, businesses don't necessarily wipe the data that they shouldn't be keeping any longer. So are you scared about it? Do you love the idea? Personally, I love the idea. I love the convenience, but I do understand why some people are a bit nervous about it.
Speaking of travelling, hotels are doing something very interesting to get rid of bed bugs. What's happening there?
Well, luckily we don't have too many problems with bed bugs in Australia, and I'm certainly sure there's not many motels that I can remember staying in that are having bed bug problems. But in the UK, in Paris, in some parts of Europe, they're actually getting a major problem with bed bug outbreaks. And so that's obviously a major problem. Now, you've got a couple of ways you can solve this problem. You can just come in and blast a whole bunch of chemicals around the place. Now, that doesn't sound great from an environmental perspective, but it also doesn't sound great from a cost perspective. It's incredibly expensive. Some motels are spending thousands of pounds in just flushing out all these bed bugs with chemicals. So, of course, there's a technology solution, and a little company called Spotter came up with a concept, and they've got these little devices that are inserted into every room, basically in between the mattresses in a motel room, and they're about the size of a matchbox. But inside that matchbox, you've got a tiny camera, a tiny motion device, and a connection back to the motel's internet connection. And what that does is that looks for bed bugs. They've got something in that little matchbox that attracts bed bugs, and then there's someone sitting back at a central control centre, and they can see on the tiny camera there when it's actually a bed bug that crawls in rather than something that they don't care about or a false alarm. Once they know there's a bed bug in a certain room, they can send the chemical process into just a room rather than getting it into the whole motel. So it's cheaper, not as bad for eradicating chemicals throughout the whole place. But you want to get them early as well, because an adult female bed bug can lay 400 eggs in the space of a few months. And the problem with that as well is if that gets in some of your clothes while you happen to be staying there, then you pack your bag and off you go back to the next country or somewhere else. You're, of course, part of the problem of spreading those bed bugs to the next motel that you might be staying at. So that early detection is crucial. But I love the way we've got this miniaturisation, batteries that are very good, connections that are very good. So you've got all this technology that's been developed for other things, often smartphones, but using in something like the detection of bed bugs now.
Ooh, 400 eggs makes me feel sick. On the text, Deb said, my husband had kidney stones and they used that machine, the one you were talking about. What was the machine called?
Histotripsy was the process, and there's another technique called lithotripsy that has been used to break apart kidney stones in the past and still being used now. And that's a little bit different because kidney stones are a different type of substance, different makeup of substance compared to the cells around that area. So that's been used fairly successfully in the past and much better than some of the other techniques used to break up kidney stones, which involve pieces of equipment being put in places that sound very painful. The big thing with histotripsy is that it's attacking cells that are in part of other cells that are very similar. So trying to get those sound waves to focus on just the tumorous cells is the real challenge here. There's also been some work done on another device called an exablate prostate, and that's a trial for cancer of prostate cancer using the same technique. That one hasn't progressed as far yet. It's not at the stage where it's FDA approved, for example. So sound waves could be used for a whole range of different things in our body. It's a matter of getting those frequencies right and getting it targeted in the right areas.
Yeah, and we've been talking tonight about using sound to shatter liver tumours. On the text, well, this is interesting for me. I don't know about you at all, Matthew, but did you know that Queen Victoria was only 4'11" as well?
Do you think Queen Victoria had to push her way up to the front of concerts, or you reckon she had a different seat?
Listen, I'm not a historian, but we've been spreading both fake history and debunking it today. And I'm just going to say that allegedly she always went to the front of a concert in front of the speaker. Debunk me if you wish, but that's what I've heard.
There you go.
Thank you so much for chatting today.
Always my pleasure. Thanks, Lisa.
Matthew Dickerson is the presenter of the Tech Talk podcast. Listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. That one again, it is the Tech Talk podcast.